Welcome, everyone. So we are at the What the Candidate Says video podcast together with Carolina Cabrera John today. How are you, Carolina?
Oh, good. How are you, Elif?
Thank you. Thanks for joining us here and sharing your experiences.
Happy to.
Carolina is my peer mentor at Fraunhofer, so maybe we'll talk about it a bit as well. But let's start with your introduction. Tell us about your career journey, please.
Oh, happy to. Okay, so I've been living in Berlin for the last 10 years. I'm originally from Venezuela, and so I moved straight from there. My background, actually, academically and stuff, it's in humanities and cultural science. I did languages back home in Venezuela, and then I came here to do a master's. I did cultural studies and actually wanted to go into academia later on, like go back home. But, like I got job here, things back home weren't that great, like politically and economically. And so I just kind of like find a way to like stay over here, which is, by no means easy, but it was like a good decision. And so looking at the like career outlook that I had here, I figure out pretty quickly while I was in university here that academia is not a good option, especially, for someone who's like not German and a person of color and etc. And so I don't know. I was just thinking about what to do. And in my first, student job here, so that was, like 8 years ago or something. I met a lot of good friends and I had some exposure to like tech adjacent. It was one of those like research analyst jobs. And there, a couple of friends and I got interested into like transitioning into tech. My friend's background was in journalism and she was doing also like environmental studies and stuff. And we were interested in learning about, but at that point I didn't know what, if it was like software development or data science or what. And so we were looking for, places to go, meetups, groups. We found a couple of meetups. We did a couple of like weekend like programming intros. We did like a Ruby one, and then we found Frauenloop. That was 2017. We signed up for like a first weekend of I think it was like design your own page. It was like front end. And yeah, there we met a bunch of people. We met Nakima, the founder, and yeah, and then we were interested in I think they were starting with the cycles, and I think they were doing their first like SQL cycle. And we did it with Alex. Alex was our mentor, really nice. And so yeah, and then we did a few cycles. Like I didn't know around that time what was like most interesting to me. Like I did quickly sort of lean towards more like the analytics or like data science side of the development side. And then after a couple of years, like working full time and other stuff, and then kind of like transitioning from like a bit more, like quantitative skills job to another and whatnot, I got like my first like analyst job. I was working for a language app, and there I joined a team that was introducing like data driven analysis to the performance of the language lessons. And so, like they didn't have metrics that were specific to their material and whatnot. And from there, after a while in that team, I moved to like the product analytics team, and that was a manager of that team. That was a team that we interacted a lot with. And like they started hiring for product managers, and actually this person like suggested that I apply, that I would like move teams. And that was like, I would say, the biggest step was the first team, but then that one was like, it kind of like solidified it. And in that time I figure out that the space that I like within tech is data analytics. I think is like an sort of like in between enough space where I can like retrieve from like my previous experience and other stuff and other skills, but also apply tech skills. And I like it. And mainly I like product. And so since then, I've worked for like, I think like 4 companies. So that was 4 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure if you could hear it. My cat was trying to sabotage
I
our
know I saw
session.
him, but I didn't hear him.
Um, so you mentioned a lot of things actually. It wasn't very straightforward a process for you. You didn't know what direction you wanted to go. So you had some short introductions thanks to networking, like and the community. So a lot of things. Like also sharing a little bit about of this process, like now you're settled, you know what you want to do, and you're good at your job, everything is much more clear. But sharing like these difficulties
Oh yeah.
and if you didn't mention some things, how you overcame these difficulties, maybe you
Oh
can.
yeah, happy to. Yeah, it wasn't like easy or quick or straightforward at all. But as you said, like community and networking was really important. Not only like networking, because I remember trying a lot of stuff, like going to meetups and also going to events, going to like talks, going to I don't know, conferences when it was possible, if it was free, or there were like, I don't know, like diversity tickets, like they call them. And yeah, and it was a lot, it was a lot. And sometimes it was overwhelming because you didn't know like where to, like where to look, what to, like dedicate, what to put your time on, in order to move forward. And then when you also have to work on something else on the side. So it didn't make it easy. I think like what helped me through the process was, yeah, like community and network, like this friend that I started like on this path with. Yeah, we're still friends, we're both in tech. She's a data engineer now. And like we kind of helped each other along the way a lot. Like the community of Frauenloop helped a lot because it wasn't only the mentoring. And by only I don't mean that it's little, but it wasn't just like them literally like teaching me these skills to move on to a new career, but also a lot of more like soft related things, like, knowing different types of position, that in what are the differences, and bringing people, there were like workshops where from Loop would invite people in different roles, and you will learn the difference between, like a product manager, a product owner, and the things that, you don't have access to if you're not like already in the industry. So that really helped a lot, like narrowing it down to what was it that I at least thought that I wanted to do, and what I needed, what were like the minimal requirements to get my foot in the door. That really helped. And that, like you also get from community, not only like from like, you can self-study, you can do a lot of stuff, but understanding, like what people do and what people mean when they talk about, a given like position or a given skill or a given process, because there's a lot of jargon too, it's
Yeah,
hard to break that, like that wall.
definitely. And can you also tell us how your background helps you at your job right now?
Well, I think, yeah, like my personal background, I think it does help in the sense of like, everybody's like, oh, diversity, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at it, yeah, I come from a different place. I have a different perspective on things. And that is just good for any team, to have different perspectives. So that helps a lot. Also, in terms of like personal characteristics, I'm really like observant and whatnot. And even though like I didn't have initially like training and a background in like quantitative sciences and stuff, I I do have a background in topics that require, like a lot of analysis, and I think that help,
Mhm.
on the personal side, like I like problem solving. I'm very like solution oriented, like you tell me something and I'm like, okay, what if we do this? What if we do that? It just comes naturally. And I really like context. And that's also why I think that, like data analysis is like a good space for me, because I get, like direct contact with stakeholders, like the other parts of the product development process, other roles in the product development process. And I can take all that context and then
Mhm.
put it in what I'm doing, and vice versa. And then what I'm doing, I put it in the context of what they need. So I think having worked in different things before, having, studied, especially, like social science, cultural science, where you have to be, very specific, and you have to be very thorough in terms of, what idea you're going with, who you're citing and why. And, you have to defend your idea, but also like bring it, like deconstruct and say, this is why I support it, even though it has this weak points, et cetera, et cetera. That really helps, I think, in terms of, especially of insights and communicating insights. So I think that really helped me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's really the reward, like all these difficulties you go through because of like trying to close a gap.
Mm-hmm.
You don't come from technical background, and once you reach to the point, you get the job, you can really enjoy the fruits of like
Mm-hmm.
your differences.
Mm-hmm. And it's
Asking,
something, oh, sorry.
yeah, you can.
Yeah, no, and it's something that kind of like, just you realize it, yeah, like after or like during, like in the process when you're applying for that first job, or like even that second job, or you start as a junior, now you want to go to like, mid-level professional level position, and you see the requirements and you're like, oh, well, but I don't have this, but I don't have that. And then, it's easy to get in the mindset of, trying to like justify that, or, like work it around. It's like, I don't have this, but I did this. But then, sometimes if an interview goes well, or if you're like at your job and you're doing something and you feel satisfied and you see how you're doing it well and why, because of like the things that you have learned, etc., then, then you learn how to, and also like, I know, like vocalize it, like, as they say, toot your own horn. Like that's good to do, if you have things that make you good at whatever you do, and they don't have to literally be related just to like your skills that you learn for like your tech job, like bring them out, like see how they're related. Like there's a way to
There will
to
be
probably
time
like relate
you
it.
will realize how they are related.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry, like
No, don't worry.
yes.
It's so cute.
Um, so maybe we can continue with the interview processes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you can tell us about your most interesting experience. It can be good or
Mm-hmm.
bad.
I had a really nice experience relatively recently. Like the first question, it was a hiring manager right off the bat, so it wasn't a recruiter. So that was like interesting too. I like that. Just, kind of saving possibly a whole week in the process. And then, this person introduced themselves, and then they said like, okay, so now please, if you want to introduce yourself, or my first question to lead into that's like, how would your friends, describe you? And then I was just like thinking about it, and I was like, okay, there's a lot of things that I can say, but also there's an interview. So, and it's fun to try to find that space where you can be more yourself, but you're also, you're also selling yourself because it's an interview. But, and I think that, yeah, that comes with confidence and with practice, like not confidence, because all you've had like all these cool jobs and blah, blah, but with practice and interview in itself, like interviewing is a skill that's not necessarily, aligned with the skills you need for the job you're interviewing for. So yeah, that's also something you need to learn. But I really like that question. It was like genuine. And then, like I replied to like as genuine as I could, but also, selling myself. So I think I said that, yeah, my friends would consider me funny and also scrappy, which is a word I really like and often use it. And, it's very informal, and you can say, like resourceful or, skillful, blah, blah, blah. But I just really like it because kind of like it means that, you can make things work with what you have around or what you have at your disposal. So I kind of like that. So yeah, like I thought that was kind of cool. And then I explained it, but also it was like unique, I mean, to myself. So I really like that question. And the rest of the interview was pretty well, actually. I had also a terrible interview last year. beginning of last year, which, you know, should have told me that that was not going to be a good work experience, and it wasn't then.
So
So yeah, I
you
was
took the job?
applying. Yeah, like after a few months, I ended up like quitting that job. It was a bit informal, the process, I guess, because it was a startup, and it was also a previous manager that I had that was there then, and then he was like recommending me, and so I didn't know exactly what the process was, or if they were following their normal process, because they was like, oh, now we want you to talk to this, oh, now we want you to talk to that, and then they got to like the technical test.
So
And
they didn't tell you the process beforehand, like how the steps were going to be.
no,
On the
I
run, they added up.
Yeah, and they said like, oh, it would be great if you talk to this person because, you know, like they're really involved in blah blah blah. And so yeah, I just didn't know how many calls I was gonna have. But at some point, and it had been going like pretty well. All the people that I had talked to were really nice, and I had like the technical interview. And so it was, yeah, a video call, and I just go in, this person just don't even say hi. And then it's like, oh, do this Python and blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not applying for a position to do that, because it was it was a question like of like software development. It wasn't of data analysis. And it was like, this is not really relevant to what I'm gonna do. And then he was like, okay, then think that it is like an SQL and do it like an SQL. And I was like, excuse me, like it didn't make sense to me. And it was just really, you know, like, well, to the point, but just rude. And then I was like, well, I guess, you know, if you think of this as that, I was just trying to get it around my head. And then these guys just like, oh, you know what? I think, you know, this is not working, and, you know, have like the technical level that we're looking for. So better to end the call now. It was like 5 minutes.
Wow.
And then he
So
just dropped.
first
And
of
then I
all,
was like,
they
"Mhm,
weren't coordinated well.
no.
The person who was with you in the call didn't know about the role you were applying to.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who directed to you to that session also didn't inform them or didn't know how it was going. And
Mm-hmm.
this person gave you harsh and negative feedback, not
Mm-hmm.
considering like how you would feel about it.
Yeah, zero people skills. I was like, eh. But then, you know, like it that kind of got to my imposter syndrome, I guess, because it was just like not a nice experience. And I was like, oh my God, this and this. But and then I wrote the person that I was in contact with from the company, and I was like, you know, like this was just pretty bad. And I just want to say that I'm gonna, you know, like withdraw from the whole process. Sorry, I wasted my time, you wasted your time, blah blah. But then, you know, because there was not not like a friendship relationship or anything, but a previous like good work relationship, like this person ended up being like, oh, we're really sorry, and they all like apologize. It was like, oh, we'll do it again, and blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, I'll continue the process, where I shouldn't have, like that should have been like enough of a red flag. But that did made me decide that I was not gonna do any more live coding for like tests. I was like, that is just not good for me, and blah blah. And I remember I was like in other like two processes or something at the same time, and I had, I think, a technical interview coming. And I remember I opened up, and I, because like the people were nice, and I was like kind of like far ahead, like that was like the last step or the second to last step, and I wrote an email saying like, I just had this experience. I didn't say who or what company, nothing. Like I just had a really bad experience, and I realized that this is just like not good for me. There's plenty of evidence that says that live coding, you know, is like skewed against anyone who's not like, you know, white cis male programmer dude. And even then, you know, like people perform words that they would under, you know, normal circumstances. So there's not a lot to gain apart from like, you know, time or whatever. And then I said, and based on this, I'm going to say that I'm not willing to do this. So whatever you're planning, I would say, please consider that, do a take home, and then I present it or whatever. You put a time limit as you wish, but I'm not going to do live coding. And then they were really open about it. And I've been, yeah, like I've done technical interviews where it's like a case study and you talked about it, you know, like this, but not that it's like, you know, they put a text editor in front of me and it's like, oh, write this code. I'm like, I don't do that.
Yeah.
So I learned from that.
Sadly, many companies are changing towards this direction. It's kind of a trend these days. I guess copying from the big companies. But there are so many disadvantages for the companies as well. Like when you are looking for specific fit for the role, you are somehow, making things a bit too standard for all the roles. And if you don't train your interviewers, you get such problems as well, like bad candidate experiences.
Definitely, yeah.
But you also summarized it really nicely, based on your experiences and looking at the research data. You can give them feedback, and like right away you can say, no, this is not what I want, and choose to do. That's a fair and very strong attitude.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, yeah, that comes with, with time and like with confidence too. That wasn't like the first analyst job that I was applying to. I don't think I would have, maybe even known to do that, or had the, I guess, I don't know, the courage to do that at that point. Like it comes also like with experience, and with good experience and bad experience.
Definitely. So just to wrap up, can you give an advice or suggestions to the companies, the recruiters, hiring managers, and also the candidates who are on the job search at the moment?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, to companies, yeah, I think, I don't know, like technical recruiting could use a little work, in the sense that, in my experience at least, it can be a lot of just, like bullet point checking. I've had people ask me if I can do like SQL or GBQ or something like that, and then I'm like, like questions that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. And then it's, there should be like a little bit more of like work put into like specifically technical recruiting. Because initially I thought like, okay, if you're a technical recruiter, then a little bit of like technical stuff, not necessarily, it's just that you specialize in that area. So I think that would like speed the process a lot and make it easier for everyone. And there was, if like people had the resources to understand better what they like recruiting for. And what else for companies? And I think that's about it. For people applying, yeah, don't put a picture in your CV. Nobody wants to know that. Don't put personal information, I would say. Don't put your social media. Just your LinkedIn. Keep your LinkedIn updated. That's pretty good. What else? It's something that has worked for me. It's like extra work, but like whenever there's a case study or like a technical interview where you have to present your work, I like the times that I've written like a summarized document and just followed it, even though, like I did the thing and but like you get nervous, like that has really worked, and has made it look really good. Also, I got some really good advice once that was also about technical tests and how you approach things. And sometimes, like just yesterday, a friend came over because she was doing technical testing. We were looking it over. I was like, oh, let's see what's going on here. Like, does it make sense? Doesn't it make sense? And we were looking at the questions, and they can be interpreted in different ways. But instead of just like getting, worrying about that, someone said, like, before you start explaining your process, state all of your assumptions, and then say, like, based on those assumptions, you made this decision. It's like, oh, I got rid of 30 columns of like a data set. Why? Because I'm assuming that, if your column has more than blah, 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 then, but like, if you explain that, then, they can't necessarily poke holes into it. Because I've also like done interviewing, and I remember I did a case study for a while at one of my jobs, and like when I was being trained for it or like onboarded, it was like there's no one answer for, at least for that one in particular. You just want to know how people think and why they made their decisions. So if you start from there, I think that you first of all, you're going to look more confident and whatnot. And then it's just going to help the process too. If you have like all of the assumptions from the beginning, I'm assuming that this is this type of table and this is this type of data. And that's why I decided to do XYZ. You and your company probably have, like your own best practices. And if I knew them, and that really works. That was like really good advice.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot for sharing all your experiences and very specific examples. I think those kind of first-hand input can help people a lot, career changers who believe that they don't have enough technical skills or all in all the relevant experiences, so they might choose to give up at some point. So it's really inspiring to hear such stories. Thanks a lot for sharing.
Thank you. No, thank you, Ellie, for having me. Happy to talk about it.
And thanks for watching. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.